north south Simcoe. So who's gonna do that one?
Hi, this is Mimi, and I'm from BounceBack program with the Canadian Mental Health Association, York and South Simcoe. And with me are, if you can go to the next slide, with me are Mesto, Nancy, Shahab, and Yodia, and we'll be presenting together. On the slide, you'll see also our executive sponsor, who is also our director of services, and we have our clinical expert, Dr. Helen. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick idea of this project, because it's very specific to our program, our BounceBack program Ontario version is a phone-coached free self-help program, CBT skill building program that's for Ontarians aged 15 and up experiencing mild to moderate levels of depression and anxiety. So the pre and post program depression and anxiety scores over the past number of years, they've suggested that participants who complete the program report up to 40% of reduction in low mood and anxiety symptoms. Yet, at least 34% of participants who begin the program become unreachable and drop out before they complete the second coaching call. So we've been a very keen group on wanting to make some changes in terms of increasing retention rate. So you'll see later on in our learning steps what we went through. But some highlights in our story involves coming up with an experience survey, collecting participant and staff and referrer voices in order to learn more about the root causes. We also invited the program staff to do some change idea generating exercises and came up with enough change ideas to fill the walls of a meeting room. And this image here is a reflection of how much we went through. But it was a good moment to come back to the problem and aim statements of this project. So you'll see our problem statement really has to do with the program experiencing 38% of dropout rate. And I want to define just quickly, in our program, we define completion as people who have gone through at least one coaching call and provided post-program scores. And that coaching call is in session 2 because our first session is a assessment. And then people who drop out are people who became unreachable in the process of the program, or they declined for any number of reasons. So our project level aim statement is that by March 31st, 2019, the referred participants that complete session 2 will increase from 66 to 80%.
Okay, so this is Yodia speaking. I'm just going to share a little bit about the diagnostic journey for our team. So one of the first steps was really diving into the root causes of why we have such a high number of dropout. So we obviously explored the fishbone, but that what we found was only based on our staff voice and our hypotheses as to why we have such a high number of dropouts. So we also took a look at the data that we have from our program, and in the data we had also found that we're all missing the voices of those who became unreachable, and we only were able to gather the reasons from those who had declined or withdrew from the program over the phone and provided a reason. So that led us to actually doing an experience survey. So we wanted to get the feedback from those who have become unreachable and provide them another chance to share with us why they didn't complete the program. So that was done through email contact, phone contact. We even mailed out these surveys just to hear back. And in the end, we had combined all three, the fishbone, the run charts, the experience survey, all of that information from staff, from participants, even from referrers, and the statistics that we had to boil down to the 5 whys. And so the following slide You'll see that these led into part 2, the change ideas, and then analyzing all of those things to get into the most exciting part for us, which was implementing the changes. So we'll get into that a bit later, and then you'll see in the following slide just an example of the data that we had collected as to the reasons and the root causes as to why people had dropped out. So compiling all we knew, we found that people had wanted counseling, therapy, or face-to-face as opposed to doing something over the phone. Also, people found it too hard or that it was too busy for them to commit to a program like this. So with those reasons and continually asking why, we discovered that, there are things that we can work on in terms of the impression that we give off in assessments that might make it seem like there's a lot to do for this program. So we'll explain a bit more of that next.
Okay, this is Shahab here, everybody. This is on the change ideas. Our learning process in deriving these ideas has not been the most conventional way in terms of QI, mainly because, and as Mimi had mentioned, the QI team, it's motivated, it's excited, it's energized. So we jumped the gun in terms of doing one of the steps and gone into the changed ideas directly. So having said that, we did follow most of the QI concept in terms of using the various diagnostic tools, as just Yuria had mentioned, to come up with the primary driver and the changed ideas as well. So the QI team had come up with multiple changed ideas, but we decided to select only one idea for the project and conceptualized, a small-scale pilot experiment, which is to separate our existing standard 40 to 55 minutes phone assessment broken down into two. So the number one is to make an initial contact and provide information, which we are calling it the information session, or pre-A1. Takes about 10 minutes, mostly to talk about BounceBack so that participants can make an informed decision, allows them to have a clear knowledge about the program, what it constitutes, and improve their engagement in the subsequent session. And the information package is sent out to them afterwards. And the second one is to do a shorter assessment, so which we are calling it E-QIP. Takes about 25 to 30 minutes. Since participants has prior knowledge about the program, by doing the pre-A1, it gives them a better, first impression about BounceBack services, brief nature, and clarifies that it is, it's a coaching call or a session rather than counseling or therapy. So participants are still invested in the program. So this process of breaking the current assessment practice into two will, it will allow us to increase the efficiency in time management as well. So we are still in the process of conducting 2-cycle PDSA. So we have 8 frontline staff that are involved in the testing process. We will know these changes, by, when the participants are dropped out has decreased, the rate of it. The number of additional phone sessions that we were able to schedule, indicating time efficiency, and staff satisfaction were higher by adopting these changes. And the risky assumptions on our part is that we are assuming this process will reduce the length of assessment by separating the current practice into two. Going back to, previous slide, please. So going on to the driver diagram, I just want to thank Laura and Abel to guide us through the driver diagram process. Our focus on not leaving anything behind resulted in a driver diagram that was completely covered with arrows going all directions. So thanks to Laura for guiding us in streamlining that process into a well thought and laid out driver diagram, which you're able to see it here. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Hi, this is Mesto, and we're going to talk about the data for process measures. As you can see in the chart, we pulled our data from 2 different databases. The first one is, we used to call it BC database, BCDB. And the second set of data, we pulled it in a test period that we started after starting the E-QIP, the E-QIP project. And from the chart here, you can see that our finding was that 48% closed out dropped-out rate or closed out either because we didn't reach them or we didn't have an initial contact with them. And people who dropped out before doing the assessment session, compared to 16% only dropout rate after we did the E-QIP or the pre-A1 assessment, pre-A1 session. So that's an increase of 32% in the retention rate. And on the right, you can see 21% dropout rate after doing the A1, after the A1 was held, the first session, compared to 1% only dropout rate, which is an increase of 20% retention rate. And later on, when we continue on pulling numbers and data, those numbers might vary because we're still in the process. And we're still gathering data to see the retention rate after session 2, or how many participants make it up to session 2 and complete.
Next slide, please. Hi, this is Nancy. So I'm just going to talk about the qualitative results of implementing our change idea. And from the coach's perspective, it was a very positive experience overall. The impacts on efficiency, productivity, and effectiveness. Some of the comments were on the slide there. It flows so well. I can start so many more referrals now. Participants seem very engaged and, getting more contact back. And as well as for those participants who decide they don't want to do the BounceBack program, they can let us know that in advance of doing the original format, the longer assessment. So time is not wasted, for lack of a better way to put that. So in terms of efficiency, we did change the script, and while that script was very clear and concise, the administrative pieces are still kind of outstanding because we're still going through that test. In terms of productivity, definitely more productive. We have increased capacity for coaches to start engaging participants in BounceBack. And from an effectiveness perspective, participants can make a more informed decision, as I said, to participate based on the materials they have received. So they know what they're getting into or have a better idea of what they're getting into. So for the overall challenges in this E-QIP project, data validity was one. Our measures were being pulled from 3 different databases, and so we were trying to make the data consistent, the measures consistent, so that provided some challenges in terms of the data integrity. Reaching unreachable participants of the program to ask them their reasons for not continuing or dropping out of the program, that was also challenging. The time commitment that was required to engage with this project was also a challenge, and we were also developing a plan and testing the change cycle during time of changes. So, for example, those included a relatively new database and operational procedures, including risk management procedures, note-taking necessities, a sudden influx of referrals, and catching up. So, for example, there we went from an average of 500 referrals a month in January, February, March to 1,200 in July, and we're still at that kind of state. So that was a huge operational change, and so there needed to be some immediate process changes going on outside of this project. So, we don't know how that necessarily impacted our own results. I think that's it. Thanks.
Okay, so there were a lot of challenges for sure, but we were also learning a lot of things in the process, and we started out being super excited about making improvements to our retention rate, reducing staff workload in the process, as well as improving client experience of the service. And we had a lot of enabling factors, including everyone's support, executive sponsor support, Laura and Abel, QI and data support, we had definitely an overflow of referrals in order for us to do the test. And also we had a lot of data support, and we even got volunteer to do some of the data collections for us, as well as budget for information package. Next slide, please. What we would do differently next time, first of all, I think as Shahab had said earlier, certain parts we jumped the gun a little bit, so I think next time it would be about being able to learn the tools for certain, so that we know that every single step is supported by E-QIP science. We also want to make sure that everyone is up to date in terms of explicitly how do we input data, how to use the tools involved in the project, as well as making sure that all levels, including staff, management, director, and admin, we're all on the same page in terms of time commitment and how to do this project. And we definitely can foresee impacts for beyond this project. We now have learned a very useful quality improvement science that we can apply to other areas in the program. We also learned to be careful of the balancing measures or balancing effects that comes with any changes, and also intake process outlook. So especially how we've been looking at the experience of clients in our intake process, we want to make improvements on that for our program overall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. How exciting to hear from so many members of your team. That was a great presentation. So some pretty important work and some great pieces coming out of that. Can I just ask about were you able to use any of the diagnostic tools to assist with identifying the root causes, and if you did, which ones those were?
I think for us, it was all of them, the fishbone, the run charts, the survey that we had compiled together, but it was compiling all of those data and then deciding as a staff, we all voted together which ones would be the root causes that we would focus on. So we picked 5, and then we did the 5 whys diagnostic tool with that.
Super, thank you. Let me see if there's some other questions here. So Laura, question from Laura. So do you think that if you hadn't completed the experience surveys, do you think your improvement efforts would have gone in a different direction?
So it would have impacted to some extent, but then we did have the support of the previous or the older database, which we were able to extract those data from. As Nancy had mentioned, there were some data integrity issues, but we tried our best to get the best sample possible in terms of going.
Okay. Did you find it challenging to determine the scope of your project?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Did you find it challenging to determine the scope of your project?
So in the beginning, a large part of our stats had indicated that there were issues with referrers understanding how to use this program, but we determined that that's outside of the scope of this particular project, because this project is made up of just BounceBack coaches. So we decided to do what we can, and that doesn't include changing the referrer line at this point.
And from Abel, great work, great teamwork. Everyone was eager to be involved and wants to continue to do the improvements. Happy to see such a level of success of your team. So that's from Abel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Well, thank you very much. So Sue St. Marie is up next. Who's